Thursday, April 22nd, reconvening after an executive closed session to discuss litigation regarding the Trudency versus Town of Stevensville case with the city attorney and our defense counsel. That item has concluded. Council's provided their feedback and input to the attorneys as they proceed with the case. So we'll move into the executive report. Yes, doors unlocked. I don't know if anybody's out there. It's a ghost town. The executive report, I'll just keep as brief as I can. You guys, there's a lot going on in our community and in our organization, and a lot of good stuff, mind you. We held a meeting, the Public Works Department and I held a meeting with HDR Engineering regarding our preliminary engineering report for the water system. And there's some good news in that regard. In fact, we heard concerns again tonight, and I hope that we can continue to do a better job of educating folks on the status of our water system. There's some good news. When we preliminarily estimated our storage need for the town of Stevensville, we estimated that at a rate of 3,500 gallons a minute for 3 hours. That was what we required for emergency storage. And that is an excessive amount of water. I mean, to do 3,500 gallons a minute for 3 hours straight is a huge storage tank. And I think they were preliminarily estimating that to be around $1 million or million gallons. Coincidentally, it's usually $1 a gallon. So thinking 1 million gallons of water we need. When we did an assessment of the community, we found that really there's only one building in the community that needs that 3,500 gallon a minute fire flow. And the likelihood of that building burning down is probably as likely as any other building that's for routine office use. And that's based on the ISO review of that facility. So the next highest needed fire or required fire flow for a building is like 2,750 or 3,000 gallons a minute. And so if you'd reduced the 3,500 gallon a minute down to 3,000 gallons a minute, you'd only have to do that for 2 hours instead of 3. And your storage requirements come down considerably. The reason this is good news is that if the town council philosophically said, yes, we would rather meet a 3,000 gallon a minute fire flow than a 3,500 gallon a minute fire flow because of whatever reasons, and I would advocate for that in full disclosure, then you bring down the cost of bringing in that storage considerably. It's possible then, and the preliminary engineering report will talk about this, so I'm getting ahead of that a little bit, but I wanted to brief you on it. The preliminary engineering report will discuss the idea that, well, maybe your current tank just needs to be rehabilitated and you need to look at a tank of equal size elsewhere in the community to give you some redundancy. But maybe you don't need to be building a million gallon water tank someplace. Maybe you just need to rehab what you have and add a tank. Those are all possibilities and what if scenarios, right? And we let the engineers digest that language and put it in a report for you. But oh, sorry, I forgot. Took it off brief. Thank you for reminding me, Ms. Devlin. Safety first. Yeah, I got my shots. Me too. At any rate, the preliminary report is going to describe more of this for you, but it's possible that the project, the next phases of our water project won't be quite as expensive as we anticipated, and that may free up some funding for other purposes in the water system, namely leakage. So we continue on a very aggressive daily basis. Daily, Steve is on this thing like dog on meat. He wants that leakage resolved. As soon as we get it narrowed down to, we know exactly where the leakage is coming from in terms of it's leaking out of this pipe or it's leaking out of that valve, then we're going to bring an aggressive proposal before the town council to get it resolved. And that will require the town council to spend some cash to hire a contractor to do it. Our public works staff is not equipped to, in a very quick way, go out and spend 10 hours per week fixing a dozen leaks across the community. It just doesn't happen that way. We need to hire a contractor to do that. So that will cost us some cash, but the good news is you have cash reserve to do exactly that. And that leakage will actually help us better evaluate where we stand in terms of storage. Because that's been part of our issue is that if you're leaking 80% of the water you're producing, then it's really hard to meet a 3-hour fire flow because you have to account for 80% of the water being gone before it leaves the hydrant. So all of those things are taken into consideration. Bottom line, I left that meeting optimistic about the status of our water system. It's not without its flaws. It needs serious repair in terms of leakage. But the outlook is not as grim, I think, as sometimes we hear it. And, to plug my sidewalk, that will help demonstrate exactly where it sits. Where does it actually sit? So that's an update on that. I'll be done with that. The swimming pool continues its evaluation. Where we are at, we are waiting. Hopefully tomorrow we receive a cost estimate on the repairs necessary to the baby pool. The baby pool leaks about, I think it's 1 to 2 inches an hour, depending on conditions and where it goes. So they did some core tests of the concrete, some evaluation. The large section of the pool seems to be fine, but the baby pool is failing and appears to be sinking. So the cost estimate we're expecting is a full removal of the floor of that pool to reestablish a base under that, because the only thing under it now is soil. There's no actual base under that concrete. They just poured a slab on the dirt. And that's what you did in 52 or whenever they built it. So 55. So that will be, we're probably in the neighborhood of $15,000 to $20,000 to repair that pool. And we had kind of expected that number. So we'll continue to evaluate that. We have some capital improvement funds designated for that repair. When that repair takes place, it is the Parks Department, in my opinion, that pool still has substantial useful life in it. And so this repair will be a repair that fulfills that useful life at least another 10 to 15 years for that facility. We're not going to just patch it for 3 years and then let it sink again. We're going to say this is good for 15 years so that rather than fixing it every other year and spending the money on that, we can start saving up dough for a new swimming pool at some point. So that's how that project is progressing. Department heads are working through their budgeting process. And so you should begin to see preliminary budget proposals very soon, probably the latter part of next month, if not sooner. So we'll start coordinating budget meetings with you folks. I think that's good enough for the evening. Yeah, questions, you know where to find me. Thanks for your indulgence. Council comments.
Well, I guess the first thing I'm going to say is I had a conversation with Mr. Dewey last week about something I said at the last council meeting. And it was not my intent to misquote you, and I apologize for that. I was merely trying to express my concern of someone, and it appeared to me, and it appeared to other people as well, that you were attempting to influence a vote. You have expressed to me that that was not your intent of your statement. Your statement was merely to try to drive us council members to come get more information on Burnt Fork Estates before we made a decision. For that, I apologize for trying to state that was your intent, and that was not, and it was not my intent to misquote you. But besides that, and I'm going to let that lay to rest. Besides that, and I should have asked this question earlier when we were discussing it on the agenda, but what funds exactly are we going to be paying for my sidewalk out of? Because I could not see them on the claim sheet. It didn't look like I wasn't able to see it.
Sure. So $8,250 of it is council okay with no response? I assume, I realize it's your comments, but $8,250, that first line there, that's out of the general fund. That's out of the council's budget directly. We used your travel and training budget because you won't be traveling and training before June 30th. The next $3,000 is out of my budget, the executive budget. The next $2,500 comes out of the tax increment finance fund. And the justification there is the economic development potential that system brings to the town. The next set, then we're at $1,500. That's the building fund. And I spoke to the community development pieces earlier this evening. The next fund, 2940 for $2,500. That's out of the economic development fund. And then the last two funds there for 2625 each are from the water and sewer funds respectively. It was evaluated based on which funds and agencies or subdepartments under those funds benefit or utilize the system the most. Under this philosophy, obviously the town council and mayor's office will most utilize that system, and so they share the largest burden. And by putting it in those two respective categories, it kept us from having to nickel and dime every department down. So in this fiscal year, this doesn't affect any general fund department. So no, the fire department isn't giving up turnout gear, or the police department's not giving up any training or anything like that. These were funds that existed in the general fund for other purposes aside from public safety or other programming, and we're really designated for those of us at this table.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I was, thanks for clarifying that. I was wondering because I had, as we all know, rumors like to fly around here, and I heard that it had come out of public safety.
No, it did not.
And I just wanted to make sure it wasn't the case. I also want to make sure these numbers stay relatively the same when we come back to budget time again this year. So
yeah, and I think the count that this carries us to June 30th, and so you'll readdress whether or not you want my sidewalk almost a year in advance of when the bill will come. But you can evaluate then where you want the funding to come from. I have no opposition to that whatsoever. So, but we were conscious of the departments knowing that this was a late in the year expense. We knew we had budgeted authority for the system. We did not want to tax departments unnecessarily for an initiative that wasn't necessarily generated by their department. Further council comments? Going once?
Something.
Go ahead.
Okay.
He's pointing at Patrick. Patrick's got a board report. He's chomping at the bit.
That's not council comment.
No, you're correct. It's not.
So you just. We need to be done by 9. Speaking of rumors, there's a rumor flying around right now of the type of government that we have, whether we have a strong mayor or a weak mayor, and we truly have neither. I guess I'm just to the point where I'm kind of tired of all the dramatics and the disrespect that not just we as a council are continuing, not just that our mayor's continuing, but that the staff is now seeing. And it's fueled, a lot of it is fueled by the same individuals who for far too long have been able to stand up at the podium and be extremely disrespectful, have been able to attack not just us, but our staff, attack our town, and take as far as to spread a lot of untruths about things that happen within our community and within these walls, within decisions that are made, how our town is run. And frankly, I'm not willing to put up with that anymore. It's gone on too long. We have rules and regulations that are in place to prevent that from happening, and meeting after meeting and time after time we're allowing that to happen. I'm not going to participate in being treated like that anymore. And I'm just making that a blanket statement. No more. For those of you that are not aware, we have a commission executive form of government, not a strong or mayor or weak form of government. So you can look that up and do your education, your own research. That's what I have tonight.
Mr. Ludington.
Trying to get my thoughts in order. Got a couple of things going on in my head. So I appreciate your efforts in this continual planning and zoning issue within the town. And there was some interesting things said and a lot of misunderstanding out there. It is complicated. It's very complicated to try to figure out the best way to try to do this. And one of the things that I probably should have said during this that I will say now is that the people that are on the planning and zoning committee for the town are excellent committee members. They're intelligent, they're well stated, they understand the rules and regulations pretty well, and are only looking after what's best for the town, which is why I put forward what their recommendations were. I understand where you're standing, where you're sitting on that, and I don't disagree. I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there. And the basis for that is that there's just too much. We're inundated with it constantly, and nobody really wants to find out the right answer. So again, thank you for your efforts. We're not done with this yet. There's going to be more of this planning issues within the town and zoning and what happens with this piece of property and that piece of property, and people are not going to like it. So we're not done with that particular part. So hang in there.
Council comments. That's the last call. Okay. Board reports. Mr. Sherd.
Yes, the board.
Come on down.
Very exciting meeting the other night. They unanimously approved the upgrades for River Valley Park and for the Lewis and Clark splash pad. We also discussed the May 1st cleanup areas that need to be addressed. We discussed the Creamery Park, and each member was asked to go down and take a look at that park and assess what needs to be done to beautify that park. We are also having a meeting on Monday, the 26th at 6:30 at Town Hall to discuss the specifics of equipment going in River Valley County or River Valley Park.
Any other board reports?
The Climate Action Advisory Board has not had a meeting. As the sole member, I would say I've come up with some great ideas on my own, and other than that, we haven't had a meeting.
Thank you for the update. The record is so noted. One last piece, you guys, before I meant to, sorry, I really meant to bring this up in my executive report. I didn't write it down, but it's been obviously a highlight of the last 48 hours of my job. The council needs to address the purchasing policy. There are some inadequacies, there are some conflicts in it. There are some functional, practical pieces in it. There are some misinterpretations. It is a problem for us, and it will continue to be a problem for us until we fix it. And I hold some blame for not bringing it forward to council after the debacle last summer. But I think now that you have some land use stuff past you and some stuff off your plate, I'll reach out to you individually to see if we can't schedule a committee of the whole meeting. And I will even entertain that if you can make it work for your schedules, if we could do a committee of the whole meeting maybe an hour before a regular council meeting. So we're not scheduling two dates. I'm fine with that, but I'll shoot you guys an email kind of getting some dates lined out for some upcoming committee of the whole meeting for that specific piece, as well as some budget conversations. So unless someone objects to addressing the purchasing policy. Okay, with that, anything else for the good of the order? It's
I guess, we have mentioned a couple of times wanting to readdress the whole COVID situation. about masks and social distancing and who does and who doesn't have cooties. I think that's something we should address coming up in an agenda item as far as whether or not we should continue this.
Sure. Okay. Well, agenda.
Aren't we under whatever the building is right now? though?
Yeah, and so currently the library is still enforcing a mask requirement in their facility. I think it's their expectation that we adhere to that while we're in their facility, and that's reasonable. We have obviously lessened social distancing in the room just because of meeting attendance and because of case counts being so low. We felt that was acceptable, and we haven't seen any objections from the library in that regard. So, but there's no reason the council can't more formally discuss what protocols are in place, and if there's something you want me to go to the library with in terms of policy, just let me know, and I'm happy to start a conversation with Denise, the library director here.
Yes. Yes.
Yes,
You know,
let's have her look at her policies and ask her if she's willing to.
Willing to bend on some things.
Yeah, I think most people at this table have been vaccinated.
I get my second one tomorrow. I was not supposed to have any stress tonight.
Did you miss open sales?
What doctor do you have?
Yeah, so I'll start a conversation so that I at least have maybe some boundaries and some sidebars to come back to the next council meeting with from the library. But I think from a use standpoint, it would be my intent that we continue to use this facility for meetings. Aesthetically, it's more appealing, but also it holds more in terms of capacity, and it does allow a little more distancing than the other room does. So we'll just have to work on the whole internet thing.
And I like that it's more central to town. It's easier to get here than.
Parking sucks, but
Yeah.
it's downtown.
Um,
Okay. Thanks, everyone. We'll adjourn. Great.
I end up sick and blaming you.